President Trump made a number of promises on the 2024 campaign trail, one of which was telling his supporters, "I am your retribution." So far, some would say he's made good on that promise, targeting political enemies and critics, including within his own party. For more, we're joined by Jared Gans, the author of the Hill's Morning Report newsletter. Jared, thank you so much for joining us. Who has the president targeted recently in his own party's primaries?
Absolutely. So we've seen just in the past month three high-profile incumbent Republicans lose their primaries against Trump-backed challengers. The first one of this most recent iteration was Senator Bill Cassidy in Louisiana, and the real source of his falling out with the president was having voted to convict him in his impeachment trial after the January 6th attack in 2021, all those years ago. He lost, failed to make a runoff. Just a few days later, Representative Thomas Massie in Kentucky, he was often a detractor from the president on a number of issues. He lost his primary by about 10 points to a Trump-backed challenger. And most recently, Senator John Cornyn in Texas, he lost to State Attorney General Ken Paxton. Trump, at the relatively last minute, came in and endorsed Paxton, and Paxton overwhelmingly defeated Cornyn.
Who could be next on President Trump's list?
Right. So as far as the 2026 cycle goes, we're probably toward the end of Trump's list of targets. Most of the primaries are underway, and there aren't really as many high-profile targets. But as far as looking ahead to 2028, there are definitely a number of choices Trump could have if he chooses to go this route again. Maybe the top candidate would be Senator Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. She is also, like Cassidy, one of the last remaining members of the Senate who voted to convict Trump in his impeachment trial back in 2021. Now, Trump tried to oust her back in 2022 during her last election, and he failed. Murkowski was able to win quite comfortably. Other than her, there are a number of other detractors. There's Senator Rand Paul, who has differed with the president on a number of occasions. Trump has often been quite vocal in criticizing him. He actually did support Rand Paul's last reelection bid in 2022, but certainly could see an opportunity there. And over in the House, most recently, we saw with Representative Lauren Boebert, who really has pitched herself as a close ally of the president, but she was actually a very strong campaigner for Thomas Massie in his primary. And Trump posted on Truth Social calling for a primary challenge for her. Now, it's too late in the cycle for that to happen for this time, but Trump certainly could circle back to try to oust her in 2 years from now.
Jared, some of the lawmakers you mentioned were formerly major backers of President Trump. Why have some of these relationships seemingly soured?
Right. And so, I mean, we have seen in this Trump era really almost in complete lockstep, total loyalty 100% behind the president. That said, there have been a number of issues that have come up over the years that have frayed some of these relationships. Certainly the January 6th attack and the subsequent impeachment of President Trump was a big source of tension. Trump, over the past 5 years, has really kind of made it a bit of a personal mission to go one after the other, ousting those who voted to impeach him or voted to convict him. And he's been overwhelmingly successful in that regard. There's also been a number of other issues, from the Epstein files to certain pieces of legislation that President Trump has said are very important, that we've seen him turn against some people who were formerly allies. And that really has kind of been the current state of the Republican Party under Trump, in which he really has pushed for total, complete backing. And we've seen sometimes, even if just one instance of a Republican stepping out of line, that's all it's taken for him to support a primary challenger.
This so called revenge list hasn't just been with Republican lawmakers. President Trump's Justice Department has also targeted other enemies, such as James Comey, Letitia James. Have those efforts been successful?
It's been a mixed record, honestly, at best. With James Comey and Letitia James, those were really the two that kind of kicked off during Trump's second term of this so-called retribution campaign. Both of them were charged. Comey was accused of perjury. With Letitia James, it was referring to her property, accusing her of mortgage fraud. Both of those cases were tossed out under a technicality in which the U.S. attorney who brought those charges was found to have been improperly appointed. The Justice Department has appealed, and also as far as James Comey is concerned, it has filed a separate indictment against him. So clearly, it is not letting that go. There have been a number of other attempts from the Justice Department to go after perceived Trump enemies. There was a group of about a half dozen Democratic lawmakers who released a video in which they called on military members to not follow any unlawful orders they were issued. There were reports that the Justice Department pushed for an indictment against those members. A grand jury ultimately declined to indict. There have been a number of other high-profile allies or high-profile enemies who have faced investigations or charges most recently. There have been reports that E. Jean Carroll, who accused President Trump of sexual assault, is under investigation by the DOJ. The U.S. attorney, who was reported to have been conducting that investigation, is out with a statement denying that anyone exists. So it's not clear as to whether or not it actually does exist, but it would be the latest instance we've seen of going after these perceived enemies.
President Trump has also taken on some media organizations and figures in the media since returning to office that he believes have been unfair in their coverage of him. How has that played out so far?
And we've seen this over a few years now of Trump launching multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuits against different media outlets when they have published certain news that is unflattering of him or covers some kind of controversial issue. Earlier on, it seemed to be somewhat more successful. We saw in cases of CBS News and ABC News, they reached settlements to settle defamation claims. There was agreement to provide funds for his presidential library. More recently, there's been more of a challenge. Trump has filed a defamation case against the New York Times. That case was ultimately dismissed, and Trump has refiled it. Most recently, he has refiled a separate defamation case against the Wall Street Journal over reports on an alleged birthday note that he sent to Jeffrey Epstein. So we've seen certainly these efforts are continuing, and it's not really showing much sign of slowing down, but they are going into the legal system, and it's been a process, and he's at least certainly not seeing as much immediate success as he had seen with some of the others.
What should we be watching for as the story continues?
Absolutely. So really the big thing, the Justice Department has not shown much signs of slowing down in its retribution campaign. One aspect to look into is the leadership of the DOJ. Pam Bondi, who was the Attorney General, she was fired by President Trump within the past few weeks, and various reports indicated one of the reasons that Trump was upset with Bondi and wanted her out was because of a lack of success at pursuing these perceived enemies. There was one Trump Truth Social post that the president made a number of months ago in which he seemed to directly call on Pam Bondi to push for criminal charges against a number of high-profile adversaries of the president. And so now we've seen Todd Blanche, who was the deputy attorney general. Now he is serving as the acting attorney general, come in, at least in the interim. And we'll see what the leadership of the department looks like under him. At least so far, it seems like they are not slowing down. Some have suggested Blanche may be trying to audition to take the job on a permanent basis. And that could indicate more to come, certainly in this ongoing campaign.
All right. The author behind the Hill's Morning Report newsletter, Jared Gans, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.